I'm based out of Atlanta.
That's a good place. Absolutely. Had it been LA, I would have probably cracked the same joke, but
Awesome.
So yeah, that's probably true. LA does have bad traffic.
So
I lived in LA for, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we just started the live. So we'll have some friends who will be joining us on Zoom call, and it is also getting live stream on eChai and Wadhwani Foundation social media pages. So friends, those who are right now live with us on Zoom or wherever you are watching on social media, in case if you have any questions for Kathryn or Rob, you can ask them, and we'll take up those things in the second half. And this particular program, this is the sixth such session of today. This is part of the CoRise Summit, where the idea is that it's a sincere and committed effort to bring amazing speakers from all over the world to share their experiences and help early stage startup founders. This program is organized by eChai Network. I'm one of the co-founder of eChai Network and Wadhwani Foundation. And this is a fireside chat, but instead of just 2-3 people, we have so many people in the screen where Srijay and Yash will be helping me in some of the questions that we wanted to ask Kathryn and Rob. And online format allows you to do that. If there was a stage, and that would have looked very awkward, for a fireside chat, 7 people sitting on a stage. And Ankit is with Wadhwani Foundation. So Ankit, if you can briefly introduce about the Wadhwani Foundation, and then we'll get started with our session.
Sure. Thanks, Jatin. Hi, everyone. Hi, Kathryn. Hi, Rob. Pleasure to have you for this Fire Chat session. Wadhwani Foundation is a US-based not-for-profit organization working with a mission to create high-value jobs. And we do this with various initiatives that we have, supporting entrepreneurs, supporting in terms of skill development, and working with small and medium businesses. And we're pleasure to have you all here for this session. Thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
And Kathryn and Rob, thank you so much. The big thing for such program is to have good speakers, and they commit their time. And so you accepted the invite and decided to join. So thank you so much for that. And recently, so there are a lot of news about Kabbage. So probably addressing the elephant in the room. If you can just share a little more context about it, because there are a lot of people who are excited to know about it. And then we'll get, I have a few more questions about your starting up. But the currently American Express Kabbage story is all over. So if you can share, Kathryn or Rob, you can get started.
Kathryn, you or me first?
You go ahead. I did not give them any hungry caveats about this particular topic in advance.
Gotcha. Look, we're at a period of time between the signing and the close of the transaction. So there's we recognize there's an elephant in the room. We can only talk about it a little bit in generalities, but we're extremely excited. Yeah, no, we're extremely excited to partner with American Express. They are just incredibly focused on small businesses, and we saw this as a great opportunity to work together. We've known the folks there for a long time, and it's great having an opportunity to eventually, once we close the transaction, to join them.
Awesome. And both of you knew each other before starting Kabbage. What was your early days like? How did you meet? Yep.
Your turn, Kathryn.
We'll take turns, I guess. Usually we're together for these fireside chats, and so we can, this is a new fireside chat for us when Rob is in Utah and I'm in Atlanta. We actually did know each other before we started Kabbage. We're on a patent together from 2005 for some mobile payment technology. So when Rob had the idea for Kabbage, he gave me a call, and that's sort of how it all got started. Rob claims that was in 2007. I think it's 2008, but whatever.
And initially, how did you get started? Like, you had an idea, you got the team to build a product, or what was those early days like?
Yeah, so how do we get started? So I think when I finally had the impetus to push forward on the idea, as Kathryn said, I had the idea in 2007, and it was later 2008, and it was just one of those ideas that just felt like it kept on nipping at my heel, and I needed to do something about it. So I thought of the range of people. I wasn't a financial services person, right? So I didn't understand financial services. So I thought about the range of people I knew that were within financial services, and Kathryn immediately, popped to the top of my head. As you'll get to know her during this chat, she stands out for sure. But she not only talks the talk but walks the talk. So I talked to her about the idea. She liked it, was encouraging of it, and also said that she'd be interested in working with me on it. So I felt very fortunate. I also knew another gentleman by the name of Mark Gorlin. He had sort of a long background in starting companies and raising money. And I thought, if we could assemble this team, between Kathryn, who really has financial services and fintech expertise, and Mark, who really understands how to raise money, and I didn't really know what I was going to do, then we'd have something here. And so I was fortunate that both of them were game to jump on board, and we started it together. But it was really, really, really difficult in the beginning because it was right in the midst of the global financial crisis.
And you raised funds initially, or it took some time for you to get that first seed fund? What was that story?
It took a long time to raise money for a financial services company providing working capital to eBay businesses in 2009. You can imagine how challenging that was. We started with an angel round, just friends and family. And then, we're able to demonstrate that we could make it work and that we could build a product and that product could attract customers, and that they would borrow and they would pay us back. We always joked that we weren't trying to prove that small businesses needed access to capital, that we were in the second oldest profession in the world. We just needed to prove that we could automate it and serve markets that had previously not been served.
Yep. And the idea that you had in 2008-9, and this is 2020, what has evolved? What has changed in your thought process?
Well, the ideas are they're sort of the same nugget of the idea, but it's expanded quite a bit. So the original idea was around providing funding for businesses that sold online. So think of eBay businesses or businesses that sell via Amazon or Flipkart or whatever, Snapdeal or whatever it may be, right? Small businesses that sell over marketplaces. And what we quickly realized, and the reason we chose that was because those businesses permitted companies like Kabbage to connect into their API and pull data down related to that business. And so we thought that was a better way to assess the business. It would provide a more automated experience for the customer, which it did. But we quickly realized that if you're, a business of any sort, whether you're bricks and mortar or you're online, it's quite likely that you connect to plenty of data sources that we can connect to. And so, within a few years, we expanded it to include really all small businesses, and maintaining, I think, the most important thing and the real tenet of the business was automation, making sure that folks who could connect to us, connect their data to us, and we could serve them automatically, and not fall prey to an issue which has haunted a lot of businesses that lend to small businesses, which is manual intervention, which really sort of takes you off your game, and it really kills the economics of the opportunity.
Right. And there will be a lot of early stage startup founders who will be watching this video or listening to this conversation. So when you start up, you're very excited, and initially you get a lot of success because people are impressed with your idea, and then you get a big setback. So in your case, did you get any such big setback? And then if you did, how did you make a comeback, or how you came out of that situation?
Well, there have certainly been setbacks along the way. The most recent setback, you may have heard of COVID.
Yes.
So, I would consider that a pretty big setback for us. I mean, if you think about the business that we're in, which is, providing financial services to small businesses, and small businesses are the most vulnerable. And we don't serve any small business. We serve the smallest of the small, the 80% of small businesses in the U.S. that have fewer than 10 employees, and they are certainly vulnerable to any sort of challenge in the economy, much less a pandemic. So, from our perspective, the way we addressed that is we just sort of looked around and said, well, what are the options that we have right now? We could just sit tight and wait and hope it goes away, or we could jump in, jump down and this is credit to Rob, jump down all the many paths that are available to us. So when we first learned about PPP, we learned that we might be able to participate, we just started talking to everybody we knew that could help send customers our way to apply, because we knew that we could at least be a source for a place where customers could apply for a loan. We weren't sure if we could be a lender, but we knew we could help them find lenders. So we just started running down every possible path there was until we found some that hit. And it was that drive and ambition, I think, on the part of our whole company. We built something of which we're really proud, which is this automated PPP processing platform that allowed, more than 250,000 customers to have a fully automated application experience, and over 300 customers were able to make it through the process. So I think that scrappy attitude is what helps you deal with adversity, and this, drive to be successful and this drive to help your customers.
Awesome. We have Srijay and Yash with us. Yash, you want to ask a question? There are a few more questions that I want to ask. Yes.
Sure, yeah. And so while I know you mentioned PPP, and so over here in India, PPP means public-private partnerships. So just to clarify, PPP is, I think, Payment Protection Program, right? Is that correct? And I was just going through Rob's feed earlier, and congratulations on, I think, passing JP Morgan Chase as the second largest PPP provider, right? So so my question was on that front, right? How does a startup that surpass such a large organization? I mean, what are the key frameworks or thought processes that you had in place that actually allowed you to achieve that or to do that?
It's a great question. I mean, I sort of sit back now. We all sort of sit back and we sort of scratch our heads and try to figure out exactly what it was. I would say it wasn't any one thing, other than we all had an incredible drive to, we had a drive to be able to help as many small businesses as we possibly could. And we frankly are very competitive people. We had a drive to, be able to, do everything we could to be able to help as much as we possibly could. We also saw this as an opportunity to really put fintech on the map. I mean, if we could be, so we passed, Wells Fargo, we passed Chase. There are thousands of banks in the United States. We're ahead of all of them. The only bank that's ahead of us is Bank of America, and Bank of America has, 700 employees for every one employee we have at Kabbage. And so I actually think Kabbage was really built for this moment. We had really pinned all of what we did on being highly automated, being able to serve people really quickly, being able to take people through the regulatory, KYB, KYC, all the acronyms that relate to making sure that you're taking care of the right customers in the right way, and that you're not, you're not subject to fraud. To be able to, bring all this together, we had been doing this, but for years we were compared to other small business lenders who claimed to be highly automated, who claimed to be able to serve, a huge number of customers effortlessly without a branch. But when all the smoke cleared, we were really the ones that were disproportionately ahead of everybody else because we had really built those systems. And, a fanatical focus on automation and data is what led us to the point to be able to do what we did. And not just saying that, but actually doing it. And so when it came time to be able to use all the automation tools, all the data that we had developed, this was our shining moment. So that's how we did it. And we continue to focus on it. There's going to be more government aid that is made available to small businesses in the U.S., and we intend to be at the forefront of each of those situations.
Thank you so much. Srijay, your turn.
Yeah, so great that we are discussing COVID and everybody kind of has, taken some hit. Specifically, one thing that I was very interested in is what is the impact, it being specifically a fintech company lending to small businesses, and especially talking about, countries like India where net performing assets or people not paying back is a huge challenge, right, for the business model. So what's sort of the secret sauce for making sure that the assets are performing, and then has machine learning or artificial intelligence played a huge role, how it has evolved in the data game to be able to process and kind of do the data and make sure that it's the risks are managed basically.
I think anybody who has built models to predict business performance who claims that their models predicted behavior in a pandemic is not being honest about that, because nobody's models could have predicted behavior throughout this particular circumstance. I mean, we were prepared for a recession, because people have been asking us for years, how are you going to perform in a downturn? And our answer was always, we're going to have access to the data that's going to tell us what's happening. And we're going to have these leading indicators that others may not have, because we stay connected to data. And what's interesting about that is, even through this process, we're connected to our customers' data. So we're seeing businesses that are continuing to perform. We're seeing businesses that are recovering. We're seeing businesses that are out of business. So, and frankly, our portfolios are performing better than we thought they might right now, even through all of this. And I think a lot of that has to do with the government aid that was made available. And a lot of it has to do with just the strong will of small businesses. That's not just an American thing, that's an everywhere thing, that small businesses fight really hard. And so I think that's what you're seeing. And people are figuring out different ways to run their business, different ways to sell their products, different ways to deliver their services. And I'm really impressed by all the small businesses we've seen, whether it's in my neighborhood or in our customer portfolio, who are fighting through this. And they're going to get to the other side.
Great. Thanks a lot.
And entrepreneurship is about making those choices. So in your journey, what are those key choices that you made that made you who you are today? Like key critical ones that played a big role in your journey?
So I think, and Kathryn certainly chime in. So I think on the I would say on the business side, I mentioned a couple of them, which were absolute commitments to automation and data, unwaveringly so. We could have been a larger organization earlier in our existence had we made choices to serve every customer who came our way, even those who didn't want to give us access to data. But it wasn't about being the biggest at that point. It was about adhering to the key value proposition and unique value proposition that we thought we provided. And sometimes you do these things, you're not even sure why you're doing them. And so you make choices. I'd say culturally in the company is also a big piece of this. So we have a central value inside the company, which is to care deeply. And caring deeply doesn't, it obviously relates to our customers. It also relates to our employees. It relates to our investors, our partners, our community. Everything we do, care deeply. And that means just caring is just not enough. You've actually got to go, a couple steps further in that process. And I think it was always hard, maybe not hard, but it was, we would pick, point to the small things, that culture impacted over the years. Like we'd have a really positive Glassdoor, rating, or, we get best places to work somewhere, or we generally had really good retention rates of our employees relative to any of our peers. But it almost wasn't until this crisis hit that we could actually feel, really tactically feel the culture. And what that was just in this energy to support one another, do whatever they could. It didn't include just working long hours. It included just thinking differently, thinking of, optionality. As Kathryn sort of pointed out earlier with PPP, we hit many roadblocks. There was probably 5 different channels of work that needed to be done to get PPP done right. And within each channel, we hit 2 or 3 major roadblocks. But people were thinking so expansively that they had, 2, 3, 4 solutions for every problem that would arise. Had we not done that, we would never have been able to participate. So it wasn't just the emphasis on data and automation, but it was really the culture of the company that really propelled us during the crisis period, to what turned out to be a good outcome, for the company and for a lot of the employees. It wasn't without a lot of pain though, in the process. And so lots of hard decisions needed to be made along the way as well.
And when you start up, we are driven and we end up doing a lot of things on our own. But when you become, you scale, you have to build processes, hire people, manage them. So in your case, what are those conscious things you've done? So as a leader, you get better to be able to manage a large corporation. Anything you can share on that?
I think a lot of it has to do with the people that you bring on. It's how, making sure that you Rob has this whole theory, to which I subscribe, about generalists and specialists. And so when a company is really small, everyone's a generalist. And then over time, you need some specialists to do some very specific things. But as the company continues to scale, you find yourself in a frame, and especially if you're growing your product base, and you need more generalists, but specialists don't hire generalists very well. So figuring out how to, balance that, not having too many specialists and having enough generalists is one side of it. And the other one is hiring senior leaders for companies at our stage is really hard, because if you hire somebody from a big company, they might be pretty removed from the work that they used to do a long time ago and not remember sort of what it's like to do that. And if you hire somebody from a really small company, then they may not have the experience necessary to get to scale. So I think, striking that balance with your senior team is really important. And then, giving them enough room to do their jobs. Because at a founder-led company, we are in the middle of everything. What are the products we're building? How are we thinking about partnerships? How are we thinking about growth? And so, we want to be part of those conversations, but you have to give your people room to make decisions too.
Awesome. Yes, your turn.
Sure. And so, and great that you ended that answer with that note, because what I wanted to understand was from the time that you started to, and this goes out to both of you guys, right? So from the time that you started to now, how have you seen your roles shift operationally, right? So what does your to-do list look like? What were you focused on before? What are you focused on now, and how that kind of shift or change has happened?
And just to give you the context, Yes is the founder of a productivity software. This is a customer question, research question. Yes, yes.
Rob, I think you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yep.
Yeah,
there
and so
I always sound
question,
better when I'm on mute. I heard the question. I could hear it. I just couldn't.
Awesome.
So I say that couple things. One is, I have two primary jobs, and this has persisted. One is to tell the story of Kabbage to as many people who are willing to listen every single day and hope it sinks in once or twice. Right? You are the cheerleader of your business. You have to tell that story. You have to answer the questions. You have to, realize that some people are going to be like, I don't really care, or that's really dumb, or whatever that may be. And that happens at different stages. So that's part one. Part two, I always say that my job is to make sure that my board of directors can sleep well at night. And what I mean by that is that if one of those boards of one of those members is worried about something at Kabbage, it must mean that A, they don't think I am recognizing the issues that are in the business, and two, that I am not the best person to be able to not figure it out. You're not always going to have the solution or the best solution. You're not always going to fix something the right way, but that I am not in a position or can come up with the best ideas to solve that problem, right? So I always say to the people who report to me, your job is to make sure I sleep well at night, right? My job is to make sure my board sleeps well at night. Your job is to make sure I sleep well at night. Because if I'm worried about, for example, that we're not marketing something, like, hey, did we think about something related to marketing, right? That means that the person who runs marketing, I must not think they're thinking about that issue, or they're going to solve it better than I can solve it, right? So the other thing that requires is that you hire people that are smarter than you in those areas, right? Yeah. You can't be the person who knows everything, has all the best ideas, has all the best solution. So to Kathryn's point about hiring people, that's the third job, is to hire the absolute best people, and also recognize at times when somebody has, maybe, the job has exceeded them, and that you either need to bring in somebody above them or replace them or something along those lines. Those are the really important jobs, as, like in my role. Kathryn, do you have any ideas?
I agree with everything you just said.
And so the only other thing I'd say that Kathryn and I spend a lot of time on is really understanding the landscape of small business. We have, from our our perspectives, we've always pushed ourselves to get involved in talks, go speak at conferences, listen to other people speaking at conferences, read every article. Kathryn is like a library of articles every day. She reads everything that's out there about anything that's even remotely related to small business or fintech. Having that level of awareness and keeping that front of mind allows you to just make better decisions as you're going through, you know, and making sure that you understand, you know, what the landscape looks like out there as well.
I do have one other thing to mention. We don't have the luxury of being able to use our product at Kabbage because we're not a small business. It's not like we run Facebook and so we can have a Facebook account and talk to our friends. So, you know, we really have to rely on what we hear from our customers. And when we first launched Kabbage, we were really excited because eBay agreed to launch a newsletter that referenced us. And so we were so excited that we were going to get all these customers coming to see us. We went into the office. We were ready to respond to emails in case there were problems. We were making sure the system worked, all the things that you would think you would do at a startup. And if you flash forward, you know, 10 years from that time to PPP, we were the ones getting emails from customers, talking to customers on the phone, trying to figure out what their problems were, getting through the PPP process. It was like a repeat of that early launch in 2010 because we really needed to understand what was happening with the system. And the only way we could get that information was from our customers.
Yep. Srijay, your turn for the good question.
Absolutely. So talking of people and people build company, right? A lot of times for growing startups, it is important that they hire right set of people and at some point of time also executive and kind of, build their C-suite. So it's a very chicken and egg situation. And we feel that dilemma as we are a growing company. A lot of times people say that, you have enormous amount of funding, so you can kind of attract right people to come in, or you have right people in place. So your growth is so phenomenal that you hit funding and eventually the scale and everything else. So what's your take on that? Because it really kind of feels like a very, sort of chicken first or egg first.
Well, and Kathryn, you might have a view. And so I just remember early on that we felt like if we couldn't convince somebody that this was a huge opportunity and to join, you have to pitch people like you pitch investors, right? Because they're taking a huge leap of faith on you. So we felt, there was a lot of pride. We took it as a serious part of our job to convince people to join us and convince people to take do an unnatural thing, which was leave the security and safety of one thing and join a startup that had very little money. But if you're passionate about what you're doing and you really believe in the outcome, then you have an ability to, and if you can't persuade people like that, then you're probably not the right person to be running that company. You have to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And another reason I reached out to Kathryn to share stories about fundraising. So, and you have very marquee investors. So, what was that process like? How did you get them on board?
Sheer will. I'll let Rob tell most of the story, but we early on, Rob mentioned our third co-founder, Mark, and we had an investor who wrote us a check because he was just tired of Mark texting and calling him and asking him for money. He ultimately just relented. He was like, it's worth $100,000 or whatever the number was just to get you off my back. So, I mean,
and not to have to change my cell phone number.
So Mark did something though, which is really important, was he asked for the money. And that's a really important thing that people don't do. You have to not just tell the story, but then you have to say, and I need money. And people don't like to ask for money. So I think that's really important. You have to be tenacious, especially early on. But Rob is also the tenacious one on fundraising, especially, in the last 5 years. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, but a lot of, when we talk about fundraising, Kathryn and I will often talk about Mark because Mark had, in early days, just an approach and a way of thinking about things that were foreign to us, which was, ask for the money. When somebody wouldn't invest, ask them why. Don't believe the first answer they give you and force them to give you other answers. Go back to them. Once they said no, and tell you why, You go, figure out how to address the challenge. And once you've addressed that challenge, go back to them and say, hey, remember how you told me to come back and talk to you once I address this challenge and you'd probably invest? And they go, yeah. Of course, they never said that, but we'd make that up. But then we tell them how we fixed the issue that they had, and then they'd invest. So we had people say no to us. Our Series A investor said no to us 2 times before he said yes to us. And if you think about going out and fundraising, if any of you have ever gone and done that, think about, have you ever gone back to the person who's flatly told you no? Probably, usually not. We went back to everybody that told us no, and multiple times. And that was a really important concept. But, Kathryn and Mark and I, and then Kathryn and I later on, we just always believed in making sure that we had enough capital. You're going to make mistakes as you go through the process. The difference between people who make mistakes and go out of business and people who make mistakes and don't go out of business is money. So, you need to have the capital to make sure that you can go and live another day. And by the way, learning from the mistakes and going on actually makes you a lot stronger. It also gives you a certain tenacity, like a will to survive. In early March this year, or mid-March this year, there was a lot of questions about whether the Kabbage business model would survive. And it was of all the scar tissue we had from having to survive, and you guys brought it up earlier, having to survive so many challenges earlier in our business that gave us the strength to get through this, and not just get through it, but get through it in a way where we can make a big impact and help a lot of small businesses.
Awesome. And sometimes the founder partnerships don't survive in case there is a hugely successful businesses. In your case, it's more than a decade and a half almost. So what makes it work in your founder partnership?
Well, mostly I put up with her crap. No, I'm kidding. No, I think, Kathryn and I have, in many ways, we think very much alike. In many ways, we have a different skill set that we respect in one another and defer to the other person. For us, it's always been a 50-50 partnership in the business. And I have learned, she's been my greatest mentor in my career in terms of learning. I hope every once in a while I've been helpful to her as well. It's just, I think it's a mutual respect. And also just a realization that, this can't be done by one person. It's just way too complicated.
Kathryn, your response?
And you have to be open. You have to be open to new information too. You have to be open to another perspective. And that, I tell people all the time, entrepreneurs that don't have a partner in their business, don't have a co-founder, to try to replicate that somehow. Either go get one or find an advisor or a friend or somebody who can give you that other point of view, because it is really important. You get in your bubble and you think about things one way, and, having somebody, to bounce his ideas off of is really important.
And in the same,
and it happens even to today. We were in a call yesterday and I said something that made no sense. And afterwards, Kathryn, really just was kind of off brand and off tone and all that stuff. And Kathryn called me, you don't say dumb stuff like that. Just think, about this area. She literally did that yesterday and she was 100% right, having, recognizing that you can have somebody that can tell you, those types of things, because, otherwise, you're just, you're your own barometer of what you say and do. And it's really important to have somebody that's there to help you understand the right way to think about stuff.
And just adding on to that, sometimes you have tremendous mutual respect, things are going well, but sometimes it gets tasted, depending on multiple reasons, things are not working out or any different circumstances. So what would be your advice to other startups, who are they're together, but sometimes things don't go away and they get separated. So what would be your advice to the founders that, there are very high chances they stay together? What would you advise on that?
I think you have to, there's a million things to say. I think the two things I would say is, and Rob says this all the time, the thing we love about Kabbage is that we can be ourselves. So being yourself and feeling comfortable that you can be yourself and you're not trying to be a different person for the people with whom you work, whether it's your co-founder, whether it's other employees, or whether it's an investor or whomever. I think that's really important to be able to be yourself. And I think, the other thing, and we talked about this earlier, just to be able to value the other people's opinions and to recognize that your own opinion isn't right.
Awesome. Yes.
All the time.
I would echo that. I think it's allowing yourself to be vulnerable in front of other people. That's all part of the being authentic, and not feeling like you'll be judged for maybe the things that you're not as good at, or feel like you should be better at. I think that's a big part of it. I was going to say something else, but I'm too old and I forgot. So we'll just move on.
Yes.
Sure. So what I wanted to understand was, so founders by definition, more often than not, are generalists, right? And so I'm guessing most of you are as well, right? So how do you think of what part are you going to do hands-on? What are the parts that you're going to delegate? And given that, how do you actually? What are your thoughts on how do you go about setting goals and setting priorities, I mean, from scratch, right? So how do you actually go about doing that?
You want
to go, Kathryn? Sure. I would think you have to, for us and how we set priorities right now, it's all around keeping the customer front of mind. Which is, it's not about, the cool little niche technology or feature you can do or anything along those lines. It's really about making sure that, you are keeping the customer, front and center of what you're trying to do. Kathryn, do you have other, priority setting recommendations?
I think I've learned this from Rob, actually, this idea that the truth is in the middle. But when you have a team and they all want to do the same thing, almost without question, it makes me ask the other side of the question. Well, what if we didn't do that? What if we did something else? And it comes across sometimes, I think, as unnecessarily challenging. But I think trying to see the other side and see the other options, especially when it feels like everyone's going in one direction, understanding what that other direction might be is really important when prioritizing. Because sometimes it's not about, and we have a story about that ourselves, actually, sometimes it's not about doing what's fastest. Sometimes it's about doing what's best. We launched a checking account about a month ago. And about a year and a half ago, we said we need to launch this product. These are the products we're going to launch, and one of them is going to be checking. And some folks on our team were really pushing towards a more simple, faster version that we could get out to our customers, but it didn't have all the features that they needed, like checks and the ability to write checks and to deposit checks and to accept check deposits remotely. There were some things where it wouldn't fill businesses' needs, and we decided to do something really hard and offer a true checking account. And this is weird, but in the U.S., people still write checks. A lot of them in businesses do too. And so I think, second guessing that decision was really important because everybody wanted to get something out quickly, but it wasn't going to be the right thing.
Yeah, and sort of lop on, and Kathryn made a little bit, made reference to this. We've had plenty of people, when we've talked about doing something, they'll be like, well, that's really hard. This is easier. And whenever you hear that, it's important for you to be like, doing the hard thing is okay. We're here to do the hard stuff. As long as the hard stuff equals easy stuff for our customers, that's the right answer. If the easy stuff and the hard stuff equal the same result, then obviously do the easier path. But if the hard stuff has a materially better outcome for the customer, that's the one that you have to do. And I'm sorry if it's going to be hard. But guess what? By doing something that's hard, it also creates a moat between you and your competitors, right? So go ahead and do that hard stuff because it's really worth it. And that's important. There's this lean startup mentality, which, understandably, which is if you're not completely embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've taken too long. And that's something that Reid Hoffman has long proselytized, right? That you should just get something out the door. And there's a certain truth to that. But at the same time, the way technology, the technology that's available to us today has raised the bar for everybody, and it makes everybody's product better, look better, perform better, and all those things. It's harder to put a bad product out now just to get it out the door, because other people will have put a better product out the door before you.
Yeah, understood.
So we'll do more like a rapid fire now. So you inspire us. Who inspires you?
Kathryn?
That was the answer.
Gosh, people who swim against the flow, as what I would say, and anything from the example I've used a lot, and it seems kind of dated now, but is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is the first as Supreme Court Justice right now in the U.S. And people who had to fight really hard when times were hard, and we benefit from those fights, whether it is the development of the first vaccine or whether it is, the first woman on the Supreme Court. I feel like I admire anyone who stands strong for a cause that they believe is important.
And I'm a big idea person, so I'm always I'm inspired. It sounds, not that there's any candle to these folks, but people like Ben Franklin, like Einstein, people who see the world in just a completely different way, are people who inspire me, who just look at something and just have a completely alternate view of the way things can be.
And any one piece of advice that has stayed with you, that helped you in your journey?
I'll let you go first, Kathryn.
It's actually Rob. He said it early on, the truth is in the middle, which effectively means you have to ask enough questions to get to the right answer. You can't assume that you already know it.
I will throw it back on Kathryn. She had this line that she used early on and probably mid and late on as well, which is nothing is ever as bad as it seems. When you're going through, building a company, there are, these, multiple near-death moments. For me, I'm what I call a pessimistic entrepreneur. I worry a lot. And Kathryn is always good at saying hey, look, things are never as bad as you think they are. And I would always retort, well, yeah, but they're never as good as you think they are. But we
the truth is in the middle.
That balance. The truth is in the middle. Right? There we go. It all goes back.
And in your entrepreneurial journey, if you were to go in the past and change one particular thing or do it in a different way, what that could be?
Like a Kabbage.
There might be some hires.
Or anything you want.
There's probably a couple of hires, but you have to I don't know. It's funny. And we have not even a 1/10 of 1% of the imagined success of something like Facebook. But I remember somebody asked Zuckerberg if he was opening up their first Boston office, and they said if there's anything you could have done differently, he's like, I would have kept the company in Boston. And I was thinking to myself, no, that worked out pretty good. I wouldn't change anything, if I were you. And I feel the same way about where we are right now, which is, we've gotten to a place where we've helped a lot of businesses, have taken care of a lot of employees and have brought good results to our investors. And, we tend to be people who, don't live in the world of regret and, wish I had done this or wish I had done that. I think we both tend to be people who, realize that everything we've done has led us to something that's hopefully been a positive.
And this is something both of you need to answer. Which activity of your work you enjoy the most?
Which activity of what?
Of your work. What do you like doing the most?
Awful work.
Which activity at work do we enjoy the most? I mean, that's so hard. We love telling the story. I mean, I love the result. One of the most unexpected outcomes of Kabbage, from my perspective, and we know this is early on, almost from the minute we launched, is how grateful these small businesses were for access to something that nobody had ever thought of giving them before. Nobody thought they needed it. Nobody thought they deserved it. Nobody thought they were worth serving. So I enjoy that feedback circle where customers tell us how grateful they are. I actually got a physical card in the mail from a customer. It was a thank you card, thanking us for being there for them for the PPP. I enjoy that the most.
Awesome.
I agree with Kathryn. I love when we spend time on the product. To me, that's the fun part of the job. Is sort of dreaming up what's next and seeing it come to reality. Is a really cool. It's a really cool thing to participate in because it like comes from your brain and ends up out there in the world, and that's a fun process.
We are towards the last part of the discussion. Srijay and Yash, one last question which can be answered in a rapid fire way. Srijay.
Yash, do you want to go first? I'll think of the question meanwhile.
So where do you think the next opportunity in fintech lies?
The next opportunity in fintech lies? I think there's a lot more around, I think it's happening right now, which is you're seeing companies, basically expand their value proposition to their customers. How that actually happens through a single, seamless user experience. So it's not just about like, can I have my brokerage account, or can I have, my checking account, or can I have, a borrowing account, or whatever else it might be, or expense management. It's about how you bring these things together to make the customer's life easier. So it's not a bunch of disparate solutions. I think, and that's, what we've been working on with what we call cash flow as a service. Kathryn, you might have a different idea.
Nope. I agree with you.
Okay.
Awesome. Srijay, your question, and then we'll end with my last question.
All right. So I'll end it on a very good note. The question is, if you were to start again, another startup after Kabbage, would you guys be co-founders? I want to say, hell yeah.
And there was a question about drum technologies.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, we've already done that. We started a company called Drum that has two apps. One's called Drum and one's called Scout. And yeah, without a doubt, not breaking up the band at all.
That's awesome.
Awesome. And Kathryn and Rob, thank you so much for your time. So typically this is ending Zoom calls becomes tricky sometimes. So what we try to do is to end on a high. So think of this as a university class, and you were invited as a chief guest for a convocation, and you were supposed to give one-line convocation message. So Rob, what would be your one? So moment you end your sentence, I'll close the call. So we'll end on a high.
Wait, say that again.
Yes,
I missed some of that. Kathryn, why don't you go first?
And on a high note is what you're saying. And so what's our parting message to everyone?
Yes, but in a convocation style. The big one that, go change the world or make a dent in the universe or something.
I have I'm going to say presume positive intent. Most people want to be helpful. Most people want to help you. And when people help you, then they want to keep helping you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathryn. Rob, you want to add a point? Yep.
No, I agree with Kathryn. I believe in going for it, and, take advantage of all that we have before us and make it an interesting life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And I already shared the information everywhere. I'll release this video and I'll share that.